Good morning. So we have a scant 25 minutes to share a lot of information, so I hope you're ready. I'm glad that I'm up first because your brain is not fried just yet. So I'm going to power through this. Not a lot of personal story, I'm just going to try to deliver a lot of value to you. First up is a gentleman, his name is Dave Trott, who wrote this book called 1 + 1 = 3. And he talks about how creative people are amazing beings that were able to connect disparate ideas. So as an example, this is a Malaysian artist. His name is Tang Yoon Hung, and he's able to turn a can of paint into a scene from Little Red, Little Red Riding Hood, and turn it, the paint into a forest. And here's another example of his work where an empty bottle of wine spills out and becomes a river. There's also a cliff where a man stands on to the right and a little girl kind of peeks underneath. And the last one is this curtain of light where some person is peering through this ball of light. So this is obviously not the problem with creative people because we're able to connect these ideas very easily. But the real problem is that we are very good at connecting dots, but the dots we have to connect are very narrow in their nature. So what we need to do is just to be able to widen the dots that we're able to connect. So today, the focus is on 4 principles: branding, story, clients, UX, and the surprising thing in terms of what I've been able to discover is how they're all interconnected. And I'm going to show you how. And the result of me being able to discover this for myself has not only transformed my company, but transformed how I look at the world. So I used to design how things look. Now I design how things work. And I used to design identities. Now I design brands. I used to work for agencies. Now I've become one. And lastly, I used to be paid for making, and just amazingly, now I'm paid for thinking. See, actually to be paid for your ideas, and it's a wonderful thing. I tell my wife, we gotta take care of this part. This is the money maker now, not the hands anymore. So be careful when you kiss me. All right, so first up, story. I used to teach sequential design at Art Center for over 15 years, and I didn't realize the connection between story and all these other disciplines. And so now I've been able to see the overlap. So many of you guys know Joseph Campbell. He wrote the book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces. And he talks about how there's this enduring tale that has lasted hundreds or thousands of years, in some cases across different cultures. He refers to it as the monomyth. And the monomyth is basically this. A hero ventures forth from the world of the common day into a region of supernatural wonder. Fabulous forces are there encountered, and a decisive victory is won. The hero comes back, and he bestows boons on his fellow man. Now that's a lot to understand and process and unpack. So Dan Harmon, the creator of the show Community, he has something a little bit simpler. It's called the story circle. I don't know, has anybody heard of the story circle? No? Okay, this is excellent. You should look this up. So he's taken what Joseph Campbell has said and just reduced it down to 8 points. But when you look at this, it still feels a little complicated. I tried to design it so it looks nice, but it's still pretty complicated. And I'm just interested in simplifying things to make them easier to understand. That's when I came upon this. And this is now a story formula that I think most of us can remember. Somebody wants something, and they can't get it. And that part is very important. They overcome a series of trials and tribulations, and instead of getting what they want, they get what they need. Okay, but I think we can even reduce this down even simpler to 3 words: character, want, and obstacle. And throughout my presentation, you're going to see this 3 words line up with these 4 different disciplines I'm going to talk about. So what we need for every story to work is we need to have an interesting character that has a certain backstory and character flaws. That character wants something badly. And then there's a main obstacle that stands in the way, and what they need to do in order to achieve what they want, they have to learn about a hard-fought lesson. Okay? And in his book, Story Brand, Donald Miller writes about the customer should be the hero of the story and not your brand. So when you empower the customer to achieve their goals, you become valuable in their eyes. And every hero is looking for a guide. This is you, this is your brand, and this is how you work with your clients. So in summary, I think my bullet points are a little bit off here. So we need to know What do they want and need? What obstacles stand in their way? And what's at stake if they succeed or fail? So far, so good? Okay, so that's the story formula. I've been able to teach this to my students. Character, want, obstacle, interesting character. They want something badly, and something has to stand in their way. And we as the brand are able to help them achieve that goal, to remove that obstacle. Okay, so where else can we see this pattern? Well, a couple of years ago, I started to learn about user experience design, and I was putting my user experience design hat on, and I was just focused mostly on that. Later on, I discovered the overlap between those two fields. So, user experience. Don Norman, the author of the Design of Everyday Things, first coined this term, user experience, encompasses all aspects of the end user's interaction with the company, its service, and its products. So in order for us to be able to figure that out, we need to know what customers and users want. And this image, I think, perfectly tells that story, where the designer, in their infinite wisdom, designed something that's nice, pretty, along the grid line, but they don't take into consideration how people actually use things. So this is the conflict between the well-designed path versus the desired user experience. And here's another example, which I'm sure if you are in the user experience space, you've seen something like this before. It's the Heinz ketchup, which on the left is brand-centric, and on the right is user-centric. Pretty simple idea, but pretty revolutionary for a company who had been selling ketchup for that for many, many years. Okay, so if you're in the user experience space, something like this will look very familiar to you. It's called user profiling or building user personas. If you're not from the user experience space or in digital, this will be something very new to you. And I found this framework that a friend of mine taught to me quite amazing. It kind of opened up my mind, because before I was really thinking about designing brands and identity systems and even my client interactions around what I wanted, around the way that things looked. And when I learned this, it really kind of changed. It was a moment, an inflection point in my life and career, and a big pivot for me once I learned this thing. So you just need to know basically 4 prompts, which is a backstory or story, the demographics or the psychographics of the person you're profiling, their goals, basically what they're trying to do, their objectives, and what they need to be able to accomplish those goals. And what we've done here is I've included an older user profile that we built a while ago for this woman. Her name is Jennifer Cortez. She's the in-transition single mom. And what we can do is, if we look at her user journey, we can break it down into 4 components: user, task, gap, and opportunity. So Jennifer is the user, and she just got divorced. This is her story. And she's moving into her first apartment by herself. It's much smaller. She has to store large items, kids' toys, a mini pool, looking for a job. She's on a budget, looking to find herself and rediscover who she is. And what she's trying to do is to find a new career she's passionate about, to not disrupt her kids' lives, store larger things short term, and feel good and safe. Since she is of a lower to middle income, she doesn't have the backup of having a nanny or a whole support system. So she's bringing her kids with her wherever she goes. So this is for a storage facility. And then the gap is she needs to see how convenient, kid-friendly, and easy the facilities are, and to make sure that it feels safe and well-lit, to be able to connect with others that are going through what she's going through, and to match her goals and needs to her budget. And when you look at it like this, this represents an opportunity for the company to create solutions just for her. So some sample solutions might be, we need to change the way the physical space looks. It needs to be bright, it needs to be colorful, we need to add security cameras, and we need to talk about our security cameras, not that Big Brother is watching you, but we want to make sure that nothing bad happens to you. We can also provide places and spaces where the kids can hang out for a little while mom is busy moving things in and out of storage. And so those are opportunities for us to connect with her and to remove her obstacles. So again, here we are, character, want, an obstacle. So in user experience design, what we do is we try to remove those obstacles in order to enhance user satisfaction by improving usability, accessibility, and pleasure. Okay, so user experience design is about user empathy and trying to look at the world through that person's eyes, to know the user, to anticipate their needs, and to solve their problems and remove their obstacles. Sorry, I'm going super fast. I see the cameras are up. I hope you guys are okay and quick with the shutter release. Are we okay so far? Sorry. I'm used to speaking for 4.5 hours, so 25 minutes is not a lot of time for me. Okay, so branding point 3. Here we go. So what is a brand? Now I get into arguments with designers about this all the time because unfortunately designers tend to use the word brand and identity design interchangeably, and they're not the same. They're not even close to being the same. So brand, I like Marty Neumeier's definition of brand, it's a person's gut feeling about a product, service, or organization. And that's the best definition I've ever heard. I've read a couple of books on this. That one works for me. So it's a person's gut feeling about a product, service, or organization. And Marty takes it a step further. In his book, Brand Flip, he states that the brand helps the customers find meaning in their life, answers questions like, who am I and what's my tribe? Because it turns out, the products that you buy say something about you. So if you buy something, what does that make you? Okay, so Simon Sinek, who's the author of Start With Why, he said that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Because we trust people who believe what we believe. We want to find people who share our values and belief system. That's what we buy into. Okay, so this is looking familiar again, right? Character wants an obstacle. So what the character wants, in this case, in the brand, is to find meaning, to belong to a community or tribe. So people are searching for commonality, shared values, community, and belonging. There are things getting in their way though, so something stands in their way. And oftentimes, companies and brands tackle the first thing, which is the external problem, when truly people are buying for an internal problem. They're looking for an internal problem to solve. And even better, if there's a philosophical problem that you can help them solve, that's the strongest. So an external problem is basically the bottom of Maslow's pyramid, the hierarchy of needs. The bottom is food, shelter, clothing, and then as you move up, you move into the internal and philosophical, where it's about self-awareness and mindfulness. So an internal problem generally is things like self-doubt, self-confidence, self-acceptance, feelings of embarrassment, those kinds of things. And whereas philosophical things are things that are much bigger than us, things that are worth fighting for. So when you're building a brand, you have to ask yourself, what do you believe? And if you want to connect with the community or group, you actually need to study what people believe. So here we are, I've broken it down for kind of 3 things using this exact same formula: the external, the internal, and the philosophical. So when you buy a Tesla, anybody here own a Tesla? Great. So let's see if this is true. Maybe, maybe not. And don't hate me if it's not true, okay? The external need is you want a cool, modern, and insanely fast car. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. 2, the internal is, it is a status symbol. It says, I am successful, but I also care about the environment, right? And philosophical is that it's addressing the biggest problem that's facing our future, climate change. And this is a carbon-free, carbon neutral vehicle. Okay, Apple. A lot of Apple people here, I'm pretty sure, right? So the external is, let's just say it's a smartphone. So I need a smartphone. The internal is, I want a status symbol, because they're not cheap. And I have good taste, and I need something that's easy use. I need technology that's built for human beings. And the philosophical, and they've done a very good job of communicating this to you, is because whether you're an artist or not, and most everybody here is that we believe that artists are capable of imagining the world to be a better place and help to make it so. Patagonia. Some Patagonia fans here? Okay, again, you guys help me see. This side of the audience doesn't, then you don't like Tesla, no Apple, they're all part of the Google Pixel thing, who knows what they're doing. That's all right. Okay, so the external is, we need a warm jacket that's well designed and well built. The internal is, and this is true for people who buy outdoor equipment, is we want to feel more adventurous and active, even though we don't go climbing or hiking all the time. But it makes us feel that way, because we want to belong to community and tribe. It just makes us feel better, and that's why we will pay more for a Patagonia jacket than some other brand. But philosophically, We believe in fair trade, sustainability, and ethical business practices. And that's why I personally love Patagonia. And that's why it's like, no, I don't, it's a little bit more, but it's okay. I'd rather buy from them than support what they're doing. Okay, you're a big Patagonia fan? Because you're nodding like everything I'm saying. Okay, good. So it's true. Okay. So what we need to realize is that people want to be transformed. They want to be better versions of themselves, or we want to be better versions of ourselves. And successful brands understand this, and they're able to tap into this aspirational identity. Okay, last one, we're going to home stretch here. This is about clients. Have you guys heard of the Dan Sullivan question? Anybody heard of the Dan Sullivan question? Okay, this part you really need to pay attention to, okay? I could have just started the whole presentation here and ended it here, and you would have walked away more enlightened and to be able to create more value, not only for yourself, but for your clients. Okay, the Dan Sullivan question starts out something like this. He was telling a story in his book. It's called the Dan Sullivan question, and many regard it as the perfect way to ask a question. Okay, so the story goes something like this. One of his sales associates hands him the phone. There's a gentleman on the phone. His name is Jack, and he's a hot prospect. And he tells Dan, I'm 90% convinced. I'd like for you to explain a couple of things to help me make my decision. What Dan did, instead of answering this question, is he asked him a question. So he didn't give him an answer, he gave him a question. And there's many layers to this, I won't break it all down for you, but this is the question. And other authors have said, change this and risk failure. So this is a good time to screen capture this, okay? I'm going to read it exactly the way it's written. If we were having this discussion 3 years from today, and you were looking back over those 3 years, what has to have happened in your life, both personally and professionally, for you to feel happy with your progress? Okay, you guys got that? So 3 years from now, looking back on this moment, what has happened to make you both happy personally and professionally about your progress? So the man goes on to tell the story. He says, 3 years ago, I was recovering from alcoholism, and it's taken a lot of energy and effort to be free of alcoholism. And now I'm just at the base level. So for the next 3 years, I have to do something that's going to have meaning to my life. He keeps talking for 23 minutes. Dan doesn't say a single word. He's just listening and writing things down. At the end of it, the man says, you've answered all my questions. I'm ready to proceed. There's something really profoundly powerful about that question. So I'm going to break it down for you. Okay, I'll leave this up a little bit. And in case you need to capture this, there will be one more opportunity to take a picture of this. All right. So what it does is, with this question, it says 3 years from now. It gives you a very specific time into the future. It creates a desired future state in the mind of the person that you're talking to, one that's free of all the problems that you have to deal with now. And it asks that person to imagine something where everything is going the way that you want. So now you can describe that to somebody. And that experience of telling another human being is rather therapeutic and in some cases cathartic. And then the second part of that question is now look back at this moment in time. What has happened? And it allows you to prioritize things that are important to you and to get rid of things that aren't. It also supposes that we are still working together 3 years from now. So it puts the buyer, the consumer, in that state of mind. And the last part to this equation is this, is that when it asks you both personally and professionally, it's asking you to consider both because we need those two things to be in sync. It can't be one or the other. And it's pretty powerful. So he says that he's taught this to many people, and if you read the book, I literally read the book on a flight. So it's that short, it's that easy to read. And I feel like there are too many pages in it anyways. But if you understand this and you practice it just by asking and you listen, it creates tremendous empathy and understanding and space for the other person to share what's important to them. So what we've realized here is the best sales technique to working with clients is to learn that it's not about you and it's about them. Okay? Character, want, an obstacle. So what people want is clarity, confidence, and capability. They want help in articulating these ideas and to help them realize those goals. And the obstacle that's getting in the way is kind of the opposite of this, is that it's a complex world that we live in. There's a lot of confusion, isolation, and we ultimately feel powerless. Okay, so in summary there, clarity about a future goal, sense of personal direction without the burden of their current circumstances. Looking back, they can prioritize what is important to them and focus on happiness and gain more of what makes them happy and to get rid of what doesn't make them happy. All right. I went too fast, you guys, because I'm done with my talk. And I'm also sorry. I'm used to talking for so long, and that's all I have. So these are all my references here, all the books that I've mentioned indirectly or directly. And thank you.